In conversation with J J Harlow. Joe Harlow is a versatile force in the entertainment industry known for his spellbinding work as a commercial actor, writer, and the acclaimed author behind the Southern New England horror anthology series. With a macabre fascination, Joe has spent years weaving award-winning horror screenplays and novels. His anthology series, teeming with deeply etched, complex characters and mesmerizing antiheroes, has become a sinister staple in horror literature, which ensnares readers and refuses to let go. Joe Harlow's The Secret Between the Pines has achieved the 2024 President Book Award from the Florida Authors and Publishers Association and was a finalist in both the Chanticleer International Book Award and the Killer Nashville Claymore Award competition. Featured in the January 2024 issue of Kirkus Reviews magazine, the novel has received widespread critical acclaim from multiple editorial publications. Additionally, Joe Harlow's screenplay has garnered numerous accolades in the best horror thriller categories at prestigious competitions, including the Los Angeles Film and Script Festival, Fright Night Film Festival, and ZFX Film Festival and Screenplay competition. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy and excitement to have on the show today, Joe Harlow. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing very fine too. I mean, it's quite lovely to have you on the show today. Quite exciting. We are here to sit and talk about your amazing work, both in the film industry and in the literature category too. So thank you very much for accepting the invitation to be coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Joe, I need to first say that I am taken aback by the description page of your book, The Street Between the Pines, which is, of course, the first book in a Southern New England horror anthology series. I would like to start this conversation with the many questions authors get asked. What inspired you to write this book? What is the driving force behind it?
I'm going to try to answer the question without giving too much of the book away because how I was inspired to write it is sort of also meta as it also appears in the actual book itself. But what I can tell you, it was about 2006, and I was adopting a cat, and I was told this fantastical story from the adoption place where I got the cat from, which wasn't even a shelter. It was like a garden center where you buy gardening supplies, but they also had cats, oddly enough. And the person that was running it told me about where these cats were supposedly coming from. And that sparked an idea in my head when I got home.
Wow.
And I had this scene in my head. It was, and it's a scene that appears in the story, one of the first major action tense sequences, which is no surprise. It's this creature appears in this flooded basement attacking a family. And that was an idea that sat in my head based on what I've learned at the shelter. And I thought spinning something out of that would be kind of interesting with what I learned from the shelter lady about cats and this idea I had. And that's how it started. And then it sat in my brain for almost 10 years before I decided to sort of write something, which started out as a short story and then it weaved into sort of a novella. It was about 40,000 words, and I thought it was finished. I sent it to an editor, and then we somehow brought it, full circle into a 80,000 word novel. And what you have before you is The Street Between the Pines. I based the story also in the area where all this sort of stuff took place, which is the shoreline of Connecticut. So I left a lot of the details are very close to home in that sense. That's how it came along. Well, first, actually, I wrote it as a screenplay before I turned it into a novel. So I had a sort of blueprint to work off of. Because I thought, I was new to writing, and I was like, well, I could probably write a screenplay. It'll take me, maybe a month or two, and I could try to work that avenue to see if I can try to get it into somebody's hands.
Absolutely.
And that just never happened. I won a couple competitions with it, and then I was like, I'm gonna flesh this out. We're gonna turn this into something else. and that's how we got to where we are.
Wow, that's quite amazing to know, really. I love your take on that. Sounds to me like you've got a lovely introduction into becoming a writer, a beautiful introduction into becoming a novelist, which I think it's a beautiful ride. So thank you very much for giving us a snippet background into the making of the book. Sounds quite fun to me. Yeah. And now, just for the sake of readers who haven't read the book yet, and of course without giving much information away, could we have a sneak peek of some of the themes and say subject lines or some of the overarching themes we'd expect picking up the book?
I don't know why I decided this, but my characters are they're all flawed individuals. They're anti-heroes. They're the
Oh,
people you'd least expect to come through at the end and say save the day.
oh,
First, I should say some of the elements in my stories. There's the redemption, transformation. My stories are also stories. They're horror stories, but they're
mm,
not just horror stories with the external horror element. There's also an internal horror within the characters themselves. Something they're struggling with conflict, whatever's going on in their minds, and then
mm,
whatever they're dealing with, like the tangible thing out
mm,
terrorizing them or their neighborhood or what have you.
mm,
I do like to explore trauma, nightmares. I
mm,
like to explore. There's I think a thin line between sort of reality and the surreal,
mm,
and I kind of like building my stories in there. It kind of, as a reader, you kind of question what's going on.
mm,
Is this really happening? Is this not happening?
mm,
Where are we? And a lot of my stories also have I like to weave in a little social inspection. I like to sort of interject like a provoking sense of choice and consequence into the experience of these main characters. Also, as I say, they're not bad, but they're not necessarily good people. But at the end of the
Oh,
day, they got to come through. They have to. There's some sort of transformation or redemption within them, and it's kind of where we are there.
I like the fact that you mentioned they are not bad, but they're just kind of not so good people.
Yeah, yeah.
That sounds like we're
Um,
gonna have a very beautiful characterization. Eh,
well, I read a lot of we all read a lot of stories, right?
yeah,
And we read characters uh, that you're kind of forced to, they're not unlikable, but they're not likable so much, but they're just kind of like they're just there because they're the main characters. They're kind of
yeah,
blah, I guess I'm
yeah.
trying to say. So my characters, you have to work. They have to make you work to like them. They're not necessarily the greatest people, but
Mm,
they have a lot of good in them. So my characters, I try to flesh them out as real as I can possibly make them to the reader.
mm,
And I personally think that's important to a story.
yeah,
Um, Rather than just going through the motions with a main character. And I know within a lot of the industry, they tell you write a likable character.
mm,
That's how you're going to get someone to enjoy the book. And I was like, well, it
wow.
doesn't sound fun. It's you can't necessarily like everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another thing with my stories, the setting plays a huge character in my stories as well. I like to give you excessive detail on the background of where these things are taking place, like with the
Beautiful.
Street Between the Pines, because it takes place
Yeah.
um, on the shoreline of Connecticut, in the New England woods, and
Mm,
there's a lot to talk about there, and I also enjoy weaving a lot of history, town history, real history, whatever state, into my stories to like kind of flesh it out and bring it to
mm,
life. Also, I enjoy putting a little bit of historical elements and realism
absolutely.
to my storytelling.
It's amazing. I love your take. I mean, I love your answers to this question. It sounds quite fun and quite intriguing to me. Thank you for mentioning. And I also see that you have an upcoming book titled Misery Plaza, which is a second
Nice.
book in the series, which I need to say I actually love the title of that Mystery Plaza. And it's quite beautiful how you select your titles in the very compelling title names you've given them. But then I'd like you to tell us briefly about that without giving much information away as well. How is that coming so far?
It's great. It's taken me over 2 years to finish the entire book and edit it. It was quite a journey. I'll be honest. I didn't think I was ever going to finish it at all because it's very complex compared to my first book, and it comes out in a month. And so far, it's been getting some really great feedback from some of the people that are reading it. I have the advanced reader copies out.
Wow.
But I mean, just the same, it's complex that it's twice as long as the first book,
Yeah.
and it's a multi POV genre bending sort of book. So it was a much bigger challenge for me as a writer to get through it. And with my editor, I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I hope you like this. I hope this is making sense because I don't know if I'm doing this correctly. It's been about 2.5 years since I started it. It's coming out in a month, and we finished it, and it's a polished Western horror, supernatural, sci-fi story, which it's the next book in the series. But if you were to put my books in order when they're all complete, it would probably serve as the first book or like a sort of prequel, so to speak.
Oh, wow.
But it is a standalone story, as they all will be. They just exist in a shared universe. Recurring characters you'll see, but they can all be read by themselves or in any order. But they're going to be a lot of fun to read once they're finished in one particular order, if you should do so.
I love your take on this, really. It sounds quite beautiful and quite amazing to me. From the first book to the second book, your answers to these questions sounds to be quite compelling and one that's quite worthy of adding one band to this chair while reading the book. Yeah, and I would also like to ask you how you were able to balance suspense, because I know these are some of the themes incorporated in your book: suspense, fear, and storytelling to keep readers hooked. How exactly do you do that?
Well, that's always the challenge, right? How do you write something in such a way to keep the reader engaged completely, keep them on the edge of their seat, keep them turning pages?
Yeah.
And that's the fun of it too. That's what I really enjoy most about writing these supernatural horror books is I look forward to the action sequences and the tension that kind of draw you in. So for me, pacing is a huge part of it. Writing it in such a way, kind of not so dragging it out, but keeping you on the edge of your seat as a reader, and then throwing ridiculous obstacles at your main character is something that will also have your reader wondering what's happening here. Is he going to survive? Is he going to make it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the obstacles are always great.
Love stories like that.
Yeah, it's just a balance of tension and friction, and it just you want to leave the reader just questioning. You want them, and not necessarily just these action sequences. I mean, there's tension throughout the entire story. Like the Street Between the Pines, there's subtle tension from start to finish, and it's which makes it a great mystery in a sense, because your reader they're trying to figure out what's going on, and you're giving them just enough information to sort of puzzle out what's happening, and as each chapter will unravel something new or something different, or so just enough information to have them question what they're reading and to make them push forward, obviously, because you don't want to get the reader to be bored. But it's all about just giving them just enough information or withholding just enough information to keep them guessing. Cliffhangers are also very helpful. I don't necessarily refer to them as cliffhangers in my story, but at the end of every chapter, there's just a little something there to push you into wanting to read the next chapter instead of going to bed, which you probably should be if you're sitting here reading it at night.
Yeah, I love your take on this, really. And now I want to diversify a little bit, because one of the most interesting things to me as a writer is to sit back and listen to readers' feedbacks. And you may want to agree with me that one of the things that makes literature to be complex is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their opinions. And sometimes the reader might get the message intended by the author. Sometimes it might be close to get to the message. Sometimes it might be far from getting the message, say several miles or several kilometers away from getting the message. And on some occasion, they might hilariously misunderstand the message and interpret the book entirely upside down. And as interestingly fun as they sound, I would like to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your works differently than you intended? I'm not quite sure if you've ever experienced that, but how does that make you feel as a writer?
Well, nobody likes a negative review or a misinterpreted review or response. But I do find it quite interesting. Now, granted, I don't have thousands and thousands of reviews, but of the ones I do have,
Yeah.
I do find it entertaining, people's takes on the story itself. And
Mm.
I must say, a large part of the not so great reviews all reflect around the same thing. It's a lot of people who didn't necessarily enjoy the book thought it was way too wordy and detail oriented.
Mm.
And it's understandable, and that was done with intention. Because when you're reading a story, you're reading it from your main character's point of view. You're not reading it from my point of view. I'm not really telling you the story. It's the MC, the hero.
Oh,
So in The Street Between the Pines, my main character Curtis, he's anxious. He's got PTSD. His mind works in a different way. He's fighting off
wow.
these internal thoughts and dialogue, and his tinnitus, and he's overthinking everything. And the way he deals with that is his meticulous actions of how he puts his mind at ease. So you get a lot of his detail-oriented sort of thoughts and movements and actions, and that's how it plays out in the story too. And a lot of people were thrown off by that. Then there was a handful of people who really hit the head on the nail. They got the story. They knew what they were reading. They understood it completely, and A plus. They saw my vision, which was incredible, and they were able to relate that into a review.
Oh, wow.
And then, there's other people that just picked out little things here and there that sort of didn't understand the story, or thought it wasn't a horror, thought there was the characters. They hated the characters. They were all annoying.
Yeah.
But it's they all had personalities. I'll tell you that. But that's
Absolutely.
kind of how that goes. And it's just oddly enough, I just got a recent review. So my book, Misery Plaza, right now is on NetGalley. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's
Of
a
course,
site.
absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So for the viewers, it's a site where you post your book, your arc, and a lot of industry people can read it and review it before it's released. And mine's been up there for about a month now, and I'm getting some reviews. And one of them was just a woman, or I think it was a woman. So a reviewer had a problem with one sentence in this entire 150,000 word, almost 600 page novel.
Wow.
And she noted at the bottom, well, she had a lot of opinions about the deceased wife of the main character, which I talk about briefly in the book, to set it up. And she was, they were unhappy or just disturbed by some of the, I'd say maybe a paragraph or two of content. And I was like, well, I appreciate the feedback, but I think you missed the bigger picture of what's going on in this world. It's just entertaining, to say the least.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, this is one of the beautiful things about storytelling and being a writer, being an author generally, is the fact that some people can just give it different interpretation. And some point you got to like, oh, okay, really? Well, I had no idea. I never saw that. Oh, all right, thank you. It just give you this like general reception, like, oh, okay, I never saw that. So it's a beautiful stuff. And that's one of the things also that makes book conversation, book reviews, book club meetings to be quite interesting. The fact that we can agree to read a particular book and 5 or 6 or 10 people come together to review it, and the first person's take would differ from the second person's take, would differ from the third person's idea, and on and on and on. We keep having different people shipping in what they think the book it's about, and how they were able to resonate with the book. Actually, I think that's one of the major things that makes readers, rate book and review book in a quite different manner.
Funny part is a lot of these reviews are contradicting. I got one person
That's
telling me
it.
it's scary, suspenseful, fast paced. It was I blew through it, and everyone said this. I didn't finish it. I was bored. I don't. There was no horror elements. It was very slow
Yeah.
paced. I was like, all right, well, I don't know who to believe anymore. I do want to share this though. I was at a horror convention, and I got my little table there and my book, and I'm trying to sell copies to the public and sign them. And this
Yeah.
kid comes up to me. He's like, I've got dyslexia, and I have to tell you this. He's like, when I first saw your poster, because I had the giant poster there of the street between the pines.
Yeah.
He's like, I thought it said the street between the penis. I died. I was like, I'm
Well,
never going to unsee that now. That's
well.
ridiculous.
Imagine that. It's very beautiful. Sometimes because we have different people who would go on Amazon and first go through review before they decide if they want to buy a book or not. And I think there's even a conversation on the BookTube Society that do you read reviews before buying a book? It might be very confusing when you see a review like, oh, it's amazing and beautiful. And another one say, oh, no, it was quite boring. Another say, oh, I had to throw it away into the dustbin. Because there's so many people. There are some people that would leave a ridiculous review. That are like, are these people actually human? Or did these people actually read the same book that I just finished reading? Because you be like, I find this to be very fascinating. How come this person find it to be entirely different? It's very contradictory. And, it's specifically based on people's idea, opinion, perception, and just read. That's a cup of tea.
Yeah, it's
Just a cup of
right.
tea.
It's in the beginning you start questioning yourself and your skills, and it's like, do I suck as an author? Is my
I
work really
mean,
garbage?
yeah.
Because these people didn't like it. It's like I need a couple positives to kind of throw me back on track here. It's to
Mm,
like reassurance that it's I'm okay.
absolutely. I love your
uh,
take on that, really. That's quite beautiful. That's very
you
good.
have to.
And even quite
It's
educative.
yeah. It's otherwise you're just well, you're falling to what people think, and you're putting yourself at detriment.
Yeah, and I think new authors, especially the newly published one, needs to be aware of this situation because sometimes it can actually demoralize you as an author. It could make you questioning yourself, doubt your ability and skill as a writer. That, am I actually worthy? Am I good enough? And sometimes we doubt ourselves a lot, and it tends to look much better into the gratification of other people through the review that people give, like, oh, this person can say something about my book. Oh, I'm so honored. Those are the kind of thing that make us like, oh yeah, I'm doing a great job. Because this person like it, this doesn't like it, this doesn't like it. But now, as a first timer, if you're getting a bad one, it kind of make you to withdraw. And I think again, one of the things I love to tell people back then, even when I started writing, is the fact that if you want to long a career as an author, you have to develop a thick skin and be able to just absorb and take in whatever readers throw at you. They may throw bomb, they may throw you water, whatever things. I love your take on that. Yeah,
Yeah, you do. It's a process.
process.
You have to have a thick skin to
Yeah.
kind of move past the noise. I like to call it. So people have opinions. It doesn't define you or your writing. It's
Well, that's great. Thank you, Joe. And just apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
so as you know, the new sci-fi or supernatural Western sci-fi book Misery Plaza is releasing April 15th. Um, it will be releasing and at many of the local Barnes and Nobles in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Um, and on Amazon, as well as you can pick up from the wholesaler. It'll be in the libraries.
Mm,
We'll do some shopping it out there.
yeah.
So that's done and complete. I'm excited for the launch in a couple weeks. I'm
Interesting.
currently working on book 3, which was supposed to be book 2, but I got the idea for Misery Plaza as I was writing book 2, so that became book 2 because I just
Wow.
jumped right into it. Um, so now the third book in the series. I guess I should start by saying I forgot to really describe the series I'm building is a Southern New England horror series. So my projected 6 books are going to be sort of inspired by New England folklore and mythology as it pertains to the supernatural. I probably should have said that earlier, but that's kind of the idea for this series. So, Misery Plaza sort of takes you out of that for most of the book as a prequel. But the third book, which I've tentatively titled Scaring Beverly to Death, is a story which takes place on the shoreline of Connecticut. It's also a period piece, takes place in the I think it's 1950, 1951.
Oh, wow.
And I just jumped back into it after taking several years off. And I'm about, I don't know, 50, 60 pages in. I have the outline already set up. Unfortunately, I don't have a screenplay blueprint to work off of, so I'm kind of just going off my notes. But it's going to be a slow burn. And it is, I can't describe much about it without giving away the what is building up towards as a supernatural element. But I'm pretty excited for it. Once you get it and you witness this month-long journey in this woman's life, staying at a summer house with her estranged half-brother. Yeah, we're going to see what happens to her at the end of the story. Yeah. And there's going to be some recurring characters from Street Between the Pines will make their appearance in this story. That story takes place in 2004. So, yeah, so it's going to be interesting.
You've got a lot ongoing, really. I hope you find some time to sleep.
I don't sleep well, but I do. I did just buy a brand new bed, and it's not working out as I had hoped. We'll see what happens. They're breaking in, I guess.
This is quite amazing. I love your take on this, really. That's quite beautiful. And now I wanted to ask you questions about publishing, yeah. But before I go into that, I'd like you to show the book again to the camera, yeah, so we can see what it looks like. I see you have a beautiful cover. Would you like to talk about the making of the cover? Because I think something that looks like an ad over there, a lot of lighting and somebody in the middle working in the
it's the cover was I was working with a cover designer for quite a bit of time to get this end result here. I went through a lot of iterations, but his design was, he wanted the cover to look like a dreamscape, which I think he accomplished. I settled on the green as opposed to the other colors that he showed me the cover in. Thought that was appropriate for the forest. And I kind of got the elements. I kind of thought I got all the elements I needed to with the title on there. And the creature is a design by blanking on his name now. David Romero is a horror illustrator, and you can find his work online. And the bat, well, whatever this is one of his creations, and he allowed me to use it for my book, which was very nice of him. Which is part of a slightly larger picture of a creature. And I thought it fit the creature in my story quite beautifully, and that's one of his crazy horror illustrations. He's a very talented, brilliant artist, and feel free to look up him up on the Google machine. But yeah, that's how we got there.
Yeah, I love your take on that. That's quite beautiful. Thank you for giving him a shout out. That's actually a very beautiful cover. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Really good.
I was going to ask about publishing. Yeah, I would love you to tell us about what publishing feels like for you as an author, and also if you have any sort of advice you would love to give a struggling writers, and also where readers can get a copy of your books from. I think I've got 3 questions in there already.
Publishing for an indie author is quite soul crushing, and no, it's very complicated and complex, more than I had realized when I had gotten into it myself. As the author and the indie publisher, it's you're 100% doing the work. It's all you. You have someone designed your cover, you paid an editor, but now the marketing and everything else is entirely up to you to get out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know how a lot of other authors do it. Myself, I'm really pushing to try to make myself known as an author, get my work out there. So that's a large part of my day, which I should be spent writing, also gets spent pursuing book bloggers, people on social media to review books, marketing, book companies to promote my book, to get readership and reviews. Reviews are the hardest aspect for an author, probably even more so an indie author. And that's what you really want. That's what you're thriving to get noticed on these platforms, is the reviews. And it takes it takes quite a bit of money to do it. There are specific sites out there, like I mentioned, NetGalley, which will help you get the reviews, get the books read, and noticed by industry professionals, librarians, bloggers, publishers, what have you. That comes at a hefty price. So, as an author, I'd say it's don't quit your day job, and make sure you put enough aside to fund your passion project and hope for the best.
Absolutely.
And I forgot your other questions.
I was asking you if you can tell us where readers can get a copy of the book. I think you've answered a question about advice for writers.
Yeah.
Next one is
Amazon. My website, jjalo.com, which I also have my events page to show you where I'm going to be. If you're in the United States and in New England, I'm going to be on a book tour all summer long at different venues, Barnes and Nobles, horror conventions, and you'll find me there with signing books. Other than that, some of the libraries will carry it. Amazon will always have it. And it's the best places to get a copy.
Yeah, that's a great one. You've got a book tour. I hope that goes on successfully.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I left a link also in the description part of this interview, where interested viewers can get a copy of Joe Harlow book directly on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles on his website, and also on other platforms. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Joe, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. And also, this is more than awesome. Very great, quite exciting. I love the laughter, the conversation around the characterization, the making of the book, the techniques of your writing, and the storyline imbibing it. Thank you so much once again for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure as well.